couple minutes, I'm going to drop a couple notes on the channels. Welcome for those of you that are just joining. Give us a few minutes to get underway. Cool. Mm. Okay. Just 2 more minutes and we'll get underway.
Cool.
Okay, we will start to get underway here in just a minute. For those of you that don't know Nick, Nick is you are a man of mystery, I think, Nick, in terms of many of the communities that most of us are on. I think that, obviously I run my Tuesday Triggers community, there's Jesse's community, Eric's community, and then there's the Clay community, all of these kind of little communities, right? And oftentimes they're all of us yelling into a big echo chamber, right? We hear, oh, everyone's got to be using this tool, and then everyone shifts to that, right? Like it all started with, for me, with like Jesse and Sass Yacht Club. It was like, oh my God, all right, Jesse's saying this, everyone would switch to it, and then like just kind of bounce around. Nick, you've been in the space longer than most people, so you've been doing. I mean, Cleverly's been around for 8 years, which is absolutely mental, meaning you've probably seen everything
Mm-hmm.
and the way that the space has evolved. But you've been primarily, for most of this time, been really great at keeping really kind of hyper focused, right? You've done LinkedIn primarily with Cleverly for most of those 8 years. We're really excited to just kind of get some of that practical advice from you today, but also hear about like your journey, hear about everything. I know that in the next like year, you're going to be shifting a lot of focus into some other channels. So expanding your offerings for LinkedIn, for cold email, for cold calling, which many of us are doing right now. So for today's session, if you haven't met Nick, he isn't super active on the groups or in the communities, but he's been around longer than all of us. Him and Nick Abraham have some really cool stuff going on right now. He is effectively one of the most OGs out there. So, Nick, thanks for coming on, bud. Very much appreciate it. Great to lock down some time. Why don't you kick it off with an intro of yourself, since I kind of just did all of that, and then let's jump into kind of talking about your history and how you got to where you got to. Cool?
Yeah, awesome. So, yeah, CEO of Cleverly, we are primarily a LinkedIn lead generation agency, but now like 20% of our revenue is coming from cold email and cold calling services. But primarily, we're on the LinkedIn side. So we have over 800 clients on LinkedIn that we do done for you outreach for, and yeah, the business is going well. I've been doing it for 8 years now, and yeah, that's the game.
I think you set the record of anyone that I know in terms of clientele. Like you're damn near like SaaS numbers in terms of clients. So I think that's incredibly impressive. With managing even 10 or 20 clients, if your systems and processes aren't just absolutely perfected, you're gonna have a bad time, right? Like, and I think that that's something that certainly you've probably spent a lot of time thinking about. I know that Nick Abraham as well is incredibly process oriented. So how do you get up to that many clients, and how do you build systems and processes around that?
Yeah, I mean, we did have a couple breaking points in the agency, right? So, like, our first 100 clients was very overwhelming. And then we kind of reached different tiers as we go up. I would say, like, the biggest things for us was one central management system. So for us, it was actually Monday.com, but I don't think it matters. It could be ClickUp, Airtable, Notion. But it's just really well run. Like everything's like an assembly line. So copy gets passed to this person, etc. So very automated onboarding, central ops, and then our service itself is productized. So we try to not do too much custom stuff. Um, like that's why we've lived off just LinkedIn forever, is so that we can like specialize and only do one thing. Heavy automation as much as possible. Or each of our account managers has around 125 to 150 clients, so getting them up to that capacity was really difficult. We support everyone with like a VA that's like a helper that does all the mundane tasks so that they can focus on client strategy, setting good expectations with clients so they're not like hounding you too much. I mean, everything plays into it really. Um, but yeah, those are some of the things.
How much of that? So you said getting to your first 100 clients, right?
Yeah.
Um, we've had growing pains in our agency as well as everyone. Everyone has all kinds of issues, but like for us, it was kind of revenue points, right? This first inflection point of getting your first 30K, then you get to like 70K, then you get to 100K, and there's all these different points that are difficult. Now, I feel that we still brand ourselves too much as a bespoke lead gen agency, a very white glove lead gen agency, which if in effect means you're doing a lot of different things for a lot of different people. When
Hmm.
focusing down and just saying, hey, this is the offering, is the way that you systematize and scale beyond that. So
Yeah.
was that the same for your first 100 clients? Do you feel like you were just getting the system, or do you feel like you were everything to everyone for maybe that first 100 people too much?
Yeah, that's a good. So actually, we started as a traditional agency. So our first 5 to 10 clients was just a couple whale clients that we were doing all sorts of custom stuff for. We actually, this was years ago. We dropped our price to $99 a month for done for you LinkedIn, and we just said we're just gonna try this. And so we actually entered the market as a cost leader. So we were like same price as like the duck soups and everything back then, and but for done for you. And then we quickly closed. It was very easy to get leads and close deals. So
Yeah.
actually getting to 100 clients was great, but we were not very actually we were not profitable. And so, but growing that fast like constrained the system so hard that we had to like get really good, really systematized, and then also we just got a ton of social proof and case studies and momentum. So like dealing with that many clients, like now we start to get referrals. Now we could create case studies, get reviews. That's why we have 1,000 reviews on Trustpilot. It's just sheer amount of client volume. And so actually it created a nice cycle where we could slowly raise our prices up from there. Um, but yeah, that was actually a big sacrifice we had to make in the beginning because we were doing like 30K a month with 5 clients, and then we had to say, all right, we're just stop doing this cold email thing. We're just gonna do this LinkedIn thing. We obviously lost money in that first month that we did that, um, but in the end, it was the right decision.
Yeah. How long ago was that, out of curiosity?
That was like 2 years in. That was a year and a half into the business, so that would have been like probably 2019.
Pre-COVID. Holy shit.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy. So there's a lot of people on that are here for practical advice on LinkedIn, and I absolutely want to spend a little bit of time talking about kind of where you see the space headed in terms of LinkedIn, cold calling, cold email. But let's run through the basics of what you look at to be successful, or how to do successful outreach for LinkedIn. Because when we spoke before the call, you dropped a couple of nice little insights, right? Because, for example, I did have Ilya on from HeyReach recently, and he said, it needs to be a blank outreach. These are kind of the steps. And then I had Julian from Quickmail on, and he said, I do a message. So a bunch of different conflicting strategies and advice. And I thought that what you had said was kind of interesting. So how do people get started with LinkedIn outreach, LinkedIn thought leadership, and what's the kind of path to go for them?
Yeah, I always prioritize outreach first and foremost. LinkedIn content works really well, but it's very hard and it takes a long time.
Yep.
And so if you're going to do it, you do it in tandem with outreach and then you play the long game there. But in terms of outreach, it still works great to this day. The game is just to really niche down and be as relevant as possible in every message. And so the way we do that at scale is just building small lists at a time. You know, usually in the cold email space, et cetera, you're used to building very large lists, getting crazy with personalizers. We're able to do that just with Sales Navigator. Just building very small, tight niches that I know if I write a sequence just to this tight persona, it'll appear as if it was personalized. And so that's our whole game. We take a nuanced path to clients. So like if they have a great LinkedIn profile, they're targeting a super active audience like recruiters, maybe we'll test no note. But oftentimes, like I prefer to include a note. Like as long as you have like something mentionable, we call it mentionable in the first 7 words of a message before it gets cut off. Usually that's enough for someone to like either click accept or click to your profile or click to read more. And then the second game is going to be, and here's like the only problem I have with some of the AI tools is like you can have a relevant intro like, hey, saw you went to this school or saw you posted about X, but your next segment of that message needs to connect to that or it's useless. And so I think all the fundamentals of outreach on any channels are still the same. Like it needs to be fairly personalized, relevant, and strong offers. Like if anything, now you have to have a stronger offer than maybe a couple years ago. But it's nuanced. Like I would say, most of our sequences don't have blank connection notes.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of trigger, and so to your point as well on triggers, it's like a lot of trigger-based outreach effectively sells the sizzle and not the steak, right? So
Yeah.
I get so many emails now that say that reference like from other lead gen agencies that are like, "Hey, I saw you, did this thing," and it's like one of our accomplishments with a lead gen agency, and then the
Yeah.
PS is some terrible trigger, and it's like awesome, awesome, you scraped my website for case studies and you did this thing, but none of it matters to me and you're entirely wrong on your targeting. So
Yeah.
I think like even like the LinkedIn outreach, hey, I saw you posted on this, by the way, I want to buy our product, like it's
Yeah.
not there, right? Like
Yeah.
and so sometimes the good targeted outreach is what you need to stand out from the noise. What do you think is going to help people stand out from the noise on any of these channels in 2026?
Yeah. I think a superior and differentiated offer.
Yep.
It's like the same as any channel, but like it has to be different and better. Um, so like whether your clients or you have to be willing to give away more, educate more, whatever, like it needs to be really strong. So that's number one. Number two, I do think it's getting more technical. So I do agree with some of the hyper personalized stuff as costs come down for it. Like sometimes I think the clay and everything gets a little expensive and unnecessary, but like you said, as long as it's a relevant personalizer and then actually tie it to what you have to sell, like it should still break through. High volume for us, we treat each channel differently. Like our LinkedIn strategy is not the same as our cold email strategy, is not the same as our cold call strategy. So, um, yeah, and then yeah, I think that's just the game. Yeah.
Vibov says, "What's up?" in the chat. The man that is perpetually everywhere all at once. Welcome, V. Thanks for having me on, bud. He was a guest speaker, always wonderful to have a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that those are really critically important. I think that. Do you have any bets in the coming year on what's going to make companies more successful?
Yeah, with cold outreach.
Yeah, anything. I mean, for example, I know that you're adding cold calling into the mix. So I think a good way to extrapolate things out of that is like you kind of got to be you got to be like V, you got to be everywhere all at once, right? Like,
Yeah.
you got to be omnipresent on all of these channels. And for me, for example, cold calling is one that I thought that um, a year ago, if you would have told me, I would have told most people, like, no, don't do that. But again, veering into that, right? Like, using Smart Lead to be doing email and LinkedIn and adding cold calling into the mix or whatever. Like, what do you think, or where do you think the space is headed?
Man, prediction stuff. Yeah, I do think every company should be using all channels, LinkedIn, cold email, and cold calling. Um, I think, listen, all the fundamentals still apply, but I know that's not your question. So I think, um,
Oh, that's good. I mean, that's
yeah,
valuable advice.
yeah, I think you basically just have to iterate until you crack some opener and some list crazy list building and outreach strategy. And then I don't think people like ape into that enough. Like once you find a winner, just that should be everything to you. Um, I think even if that means like giving away something crazy in a cold outreach that like sacrifices some time on fulfillment or something like that actually really can scale. Um, and then yeah, I think like channels outside of outbound help outbound also. So I think like nowadays, like you kind of have to do multiple things. Like you have to be doing some SEO, some content, some organic. Like you have to build up a brand so that people recognize your cold outreach message, for example. So I think all of these things like matter.
Yeah, I think that fundamentals are important. It's just going to get harder, man. Like for
Yeah.
me, I've seen deliverability change across Outlook and Google and SMTP. Deliverability has become a faster moving target than ever.
Yeah.
Data, like, attrition rate is going up, so you need good, clean data. Outreach needs to be going out via cold email. We're also layering in LinkedIn. We're also layering in cold calling. What do you see as like the opportunity in cold calling, or do you think that there is space, or people should be refocusing to some degree on that?
Yeah. I mean, we believe heavily in cold calling. I think we've seen some great initial results, also some failures in our first couple. We've only been doing it for 3 months, so we're still learning a lot. Um, in the past, I don't think it was affordable for smaller business. Like we serve SMBs and micro SMBs. Like I don't think it was affordable to run that before, and so over time it just became too expensive. I think, and it's something that only like the big funded players could do. Um, Now I think that like we're bringing it to the SMB market like affordably, and so yeah, I think it's heavily dependent on the quality of the SDR also. So for us, like we're testing different countries. It takes a long time to find someone really good, and it takes a lot of upkeep. Like if you don't manage them, if you don't listen to call recordings, like that stuff, like they're probably gonna fail. Like you really have to be good at everything. But yeah, we're seeing good results with cold calling. I'm surprised we didn't like venture into it earlier. But yeah,
What we found is it really comes down to the data and the tools as well, along with the skill of the cold caller. But
oh yeah,
like, the reason that, we've also ramped up our engine on this because, look, I mean, here's the state of cold calling over the last 5 to 7 years is like, I used to have to make dials 10 years ago, and it sucked. And it sucked making 20 dials a day and getting,
yeah,
one or two connects. And now people are expected to make 100 dials. And if you're not using a really good data waterfall, it's two connects, right? Or you're using a parallel dialer, and everyone knows the sound of a parallel dialer when you pick up the
yeah,
phone.
yeah,
It's that 4 second pause, and then someone hops on, and you just like I hang up on those all the time. I always pick up if I don't know the number, don't say a word. If I don't hear anything for 3 seconds, just end it, right? Because I know it's someone just cold calling me.
yeah.
And so now, though, if you do use the right waterfalls, right? Like we use Lead Magic, we use AirScale, we use a couple other data providers that, like, I think it's worth researching into those to find ones that can help you increase the chance of picking up or someone picking up. And then over the course of, a day, if you get 15 or 20 connects, if you don't have a good, I mean, shit, that's more shots on goal than most people would get in a week back in like maybe 6 months or a year ago when we would be testing the waters with cold calling. So data, the skill of the cold caller, and the tools all come into play in this. You really have to dial it in.
100% agree with that. Like I've learned all of that. So we don't do parallel dialing now. We just do a flow dialer, but we're still getting up to 200 calls a day per SDR. So it's still possible.
Yep.
Also, I kind of have a like counter belief on changes in the space. So like um, cold email gets harder, deliverability gets harder, LinkedIn cracks down, cold calling, like even the iPhone like flags some spam better now than they used to. Um, I think at the same time, it's also killing some of your competitors, which I see as a huge benefit. So I think that like that's why Cleverly's been around 8 years. Like we've obviously like we've had the same problems that you guys have ran into. Same with Nick A, and everyone. But if you kind of persist through these like valleys, I think like some of your competitors die. Of course, you need to innovate and test new things, test new channels, but I see it also as a blessing. Like the people that weren't able to deal with it, like leave the space, and then I see that as like a benefit to me. Yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of attrition here in the next couple of months because things have gotten harder to the point where a lot of people it's not worth it. Like with the infra changes and all of this other stuff,
Yeah.
it's just too damn expensive to do it cost effectively. And so, yeah, you gotta stick through it. So, question was, what tools do you recommend for LinkedIn outreach for beginners? Obviously, Cleverly is a very low cost version that's done for you. But no harm, no foul here. Not everyone needs it done for you. What would you say, like for people starting LinkedIn? What are some of the basics? Maybe tools or just like ways that you should work?
Yeah, I believe everyone should have Sales Navigator. I don't believe in using LinkedIn's free version. So first thing I would do is spend the money for Sales Nav, and then I would take your entire total addressable market. I would break it into different segments and save those as searches in Sales Nav. And then there's like honestly like five tools I can name off that automate LinkedIn outreach. The game is just to like A/B test every month, like two different sequences until you find the winner. But like Duck Soup, Sales Flow, Meet Leonard, Hey Reach, like all these are good tools and they're all similarly priced. So I at least like it's different than email where the tools and cold calling where the tools really matter. I think on the LinkedIn side, like there's a couple tools that would do it for you. Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about all of them, and I think that everyone knows most of them. But yeah, I think it's the idea of getting in, and to your point, you have less shots on goal. So again, 5 years ago, you could send 2,000 requests per user, right? Now it's down to like 500, and that's even if you're using like all of the right, like all of the best methodologies to get those many out. So you've got only 600 shots on goal, so you need to make those count, right? So
Yeah.
make sure you're rigorously A/B testing. Make sure that you're taking those lists and dividing them into segments. So again, your messaging looks and feels authentic to each one of those segments. Change that, like again, if you can, add a personalization in that first 7 words because that's what they'll pick up on the snippet of the message. So certainly plenty of ways that you can do that around their accomplishments, their school, their company, whatever, and go from there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a game.
Cool. Any other departing wisdom that you'd like to give, any advice that you think people should be thinking about as we go into 2026?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think like stick to the fundamentals and then don't aim to be personalized, be relevant. Like that is, I think that's the game to break through. Relevant and super strong and different. Yeah.
Yeah, well said. Don't sell the sizzle, not the steak, right? Triggers are great and all, but they need to be relevant. So again, some way of connecting with people. Like
Yeah.
we talk about it, I talked about it on the Smart Lead podcast a couple weeks ago, but we use a lot of incentive campaigns. So things like lead magnets and things, but they're pretty personalized and they're like fun, like have a little bit of fun with cold email too, if you can. It doesn't always need to be so serious. So even just like, I don't know, silly messages and I don't know, test everything. Let's see. I think that that's it for today, Nick. I very much appreciate you coming on and hope to have you on again maybe in 6 months and we can talk about what changes we've seen
Yeah, yeah.
because it's speeding up, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Happy to do
Cool.
that. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate you, and have a great Tuesday.